The world judges us by what position we've achieved in society. What is your position in the ranking? What is your power in the hierarchy? What is your popularity in the world? Position and achieving position sometimes dominates our consciousness, and we tend to judge ourselves by that. We get depressed when we are not able to achieve the positions we want, and sometimes even more dangerously, what we think is that once we achieve the position, we're successful. But actually, that's just the visible world. Thank you so much, Sulabh, for the nice introduction, and thank you to all of you for being here. Are you happy to be here this evening? Yes, wonderful. Yes, I hope we'll have a beautiful discussion. Today here we're speaking about Holi, which is a very, very beautiful, a joyous festival. It's the festival where the inner child, I think, comes out. Isn't it? Like sometimes you feel like you just want to be a kid again. And many of these festivals, they help us to do that, reconnect with that childish or childlike innocence. And what I'm going to do today is I'm not going to go too much into the cultural aspect of Holi, but I'm going to try and bring out some more practical points for our life, and specifically how we can bring more color into our own lives. Because sometimes we may look at our life and many things are going well, but we feel like there should be more adventure, there should be more excitement, maybe more creativity, and how can we go about doing that? So I'll try to share that with you. At certain points in the session, I just might ask you to speak to the person next to you and just get you guys thinking. And then at the end, we'll have a little bit of an opportunity to have a bit of a discussion and some questions. So please, if any questions or thoughts come to your mind, then please do hold them. So today we're speaking about Holi. Here are some images from Holi. It's, as I mentioned, one of the most joyous festivals in India. And it's a festival in which, as I said, the inner child is released, so much joy, so much unity. Colors, we can say, represent different things. And one of the things that colors definitely represent is the beauty of having unity and diversity. Because we see colors which are in one sense so different, but when they come together and when they complement each other, then actually everyone's beauty increases. And in that sense, we can say the colors of Holi remind us that in life there is so much variety. Maybe the teams that you work with at Accenture, or maybe the family and the social circle that you move in, maybe the friends that you have. Oftentimes we have very, very different personalities and very, very different approaches to life. And the tendency in the world today is that when someone's different to us, then we keep a distance from them. Whereas Holi and the colors of Holi remind us that that diversity is actually beautiful. And if we can learn to find unity and harmony in that diversity, then it can bring great happiness to our lives. Here are some more images of Holi. It's said that Holi also represents the time of spring. And spring is a very, very special time in the year because it's the time of revitalization, of regeneration. It's the time when everything brings out its ultimate beauty. And therefore, Holi also reminds us that there's a lot of untapped potential within us that's waiting to bloom and waiting to come out. And maybe some of us feel like that. Maybe you feel like that you're looking in your life and you're thinking, I have so much more I should be doing, so much more I can do. And how do I unleash that potential? So Holi and spring is the time when we also meditate on how we can unleash our untapped potential. This is me actually in Vrindavan last year playing Holi. A very, very beautiful festival. And I guess one other beautiful lesson of Holi is that Holi also and the colors of Holi represent creativity. Perhaps if I would say the word creativity, one of the first images that come to your mind is color, because color represents the way to be kind of, to depict and display things in beautiful ways. And in that sense, Holi is also a time when we can try to think about how to be creative in our lives. They say the most dangerous phrase in the English language is, "We've always done it this way." And so when we lose our creativity, then we lose our potential of moving forward. So these are some kind of the general lessons of Holi. And today we're going to take the kind of metaphor of the colors of Holi and ask ourselves the question, how can we make our lives more colorful, more vibrant, more exciting, more rewarding, and more satisfying? And I want to begin by sharing a quote with you and just ask you to reflect on this and whether you believe there's any truth in this. Benjamin Franklin, the US president, once said, "Some people die at 25 and aren't buried till they're 75. I want you to just turn for like 1 or 2 minutes to the person next to you and just share with them, what do you feel there's any truth to this statement? And if you do feel there's truth to this statement, what do you think dies at the age of 25 in many people's lives? What is it that actually dies, even though we're still living, breathing, even though we're still functioning in the world, even though to everyone else it seems like we're just getting on with life? We've actually maybe died. What is that thing that dies? Can I ask you to just discuss that with each other for 1 minute? Maybe I can get you all back. Thank you so much. Thank you for just sharing with each other. It just kind of helps to, I know it's the end of the day, so you've had a tiring day, so just to get you guys thinking. Anyone want to shout out, what do you think some of the things are that may die within us even though we continue living? Any ideas? Yes?
Yeah, when someone stop feeling happiness in small things, stop looking forward in the life.
Okay, so you're saying a few different things here. So we stop having appreciation of the smaller things in life, and we stop looking forward and having a vision, you mean? A lack of vision in life. Thank you. Anyone else? What else do you think may die within us at a certain point in our journey, even though we're still living? Which means we're not really living, although we're moving, existing, functioning.
Sense of purpose.
Purpose. Isn't it amazing? Sometimes we can live and be functioning every single day and not really have an overarching purpose. If someone would stop us in the street and ask us, "What's your purpose?" I'm sure what all of us would probably say is, "I want to be happy." And if they were to ask you, "What do you think it is that you need to do in your life to be happy? And what are you engaging all your energy and time to work towards to be happy?" Would we be able to coherently communicate that to someone? In other words, do we have clear purpose in our life? How would you measure whether your life is successful or not? What's the parameter? Interesting point. Thank you. Anything else? What else do you think may die within us? Yeah.
We discussed how sometimes hope.
Hope. Wonderful.
That the universe gets into your life, right? So life becomes a bit more predictable, or you think it does at least.
Yeah.
The possibilities kind of thing.
Yeah, so this idea that a hope that things can change, that miracles can happen, that unexpected things may occur. And when we lose that hope, then we just kind of go into kind of autopilot and just never expect anything else to happen apart from just the predictable. And then our life becomes very predictable and monotonous. Thank you so much. Yeah. Anything else?
Self-love.
Self-love. Amazing. we kind of don't appreciate and don't give ourselves enough credit. We kind of tend to devalue ourselves, and sometimes each of us have a certain potential, but we don't even recognize that within ourselves, and we forget about that. In the ancient scriptures, there's the story of Hanuman. All of you know Hanuman. And Hanuman had an incredible ability. And that ability was that he could jump unimaginable distances. But in his life, it said that there was a curse and that he forgot that ability. And it would only be awakened when someone would come to him and remind him of that ability, would he realize, I have this ability and be able to do amazing things. So it's interesting, a little bit of that situation is within all of us. We have certain gifts, but sometimes we don't love ourselves and appreciate ourselves and value ourselves enough to unleash those gifts. Beautiful, thank you. Okay.
Somebody died at age of 25. Actually, the body died. But we have heard so many stories that their soul are still there in the universe. So they get mukti after maybe 75 or after so many years of actual death. So I don't know.
Oh, so like you're adding another line to this quote. Some people die at 25, they're buried at 75, and they get moksha at 100.
It's about closure.
Say again?
It's about closure.
Closure, yeah. Thank you. Yes? Curiosity, yes. Einstein said, never stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. Have you noticed that we get to a point sometimes in our life where we just accept everything without challenging it, without questioning it, without asking ourselves, do I really have to do this? Do I really have to do it this way? Is this really success? It's very interesting. When we're kids, we're always questioning, isn't it? Why? Da-da-da-da-da. Why? Da-da-da-da-da. Why? But when we grow up, we tend to stop questioning why, and we just go along with the status quo. Yeah, very good. One or two more? Anything else that's lost? Yes?
Just living in past or future, not being in present.
Okay, the ability to just be present, be here now. We kind of tend to gravitate towards the past or the future. Sometimes, have you ever watched those movies where the video and the audio is off? Those were annoying, right? Those movies. Our life is sometimes like that. We're totally out of sync with what's actually happening here, and therefore we're kind of living, but we're kind of living in the past or living in the future and not really living now. Thank you so much. Brilliant. One last one. Anyone? Yeah, at the back. Passion. What do you mean by that?
So when we are children, we do everything very passionately.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it's like very monotone and you have to just do it, so you do it.
Yeah. Like our parents used to say, put your heart into it. Sometimes we just end up doing it because we have to do it, but we don't really believe in it, or we don't really have any excitement or adventure about it. And therefore we're just kind of going through the motions, but not really present. Thank you. I'm just raising these points for all of us to think. You know, we could put up a list like this behind or next to our bed, and every single week we could just take a few moments and ask ourselves, am I living with gratitude and appreciation? Do I have a vision? Do I know what my purpose is? Do I have the hope that things could change and miracles could happen and mystical things could occur in my life? Have I understood the unique talents that I have? And have I appreciated those? Am I questioning things? Am I ready to challenge? Am I present, and do I have passion? And if we do these things, we find that we'll actually begin living much more colorful and vibrant lives. Today what I want to do is share with you often, if you look at all of these things, it's very interesting that all of these things are invisible. isn't it? You can't really see these things, and nobody else will see these things. But it's amazing that these are the things which make life, life. But the most interesting thing often is that we don't really look at or pay attention often to the things that people won't see with their eyes. We often tend to neglect those things that people won't appreciate, acknowledge, people won't give you likes and loves for. People won't give you claps and pats on the back for. Generally, only when people see something and they react to it immediately, those are the things that generally we'll pay attention to. Just like today, I came here and I was like, I better make sure I don't have any holes in my socks. Because I knew that you'd be able to see that. But if I was wearing like trainers, then I'd just be like, anyway, no one's going to see it anyway. This is very interesting that often the invisible parts of our life are the parts that we tend to neglect. Yet the invisible parts of our life are what make our life alive. And so, what I'm going to share with you today is 5 things that often we put a lot of emphasis into in our life. Yet if we don't put enough emphasis on the invisible counterpart of that, we might find that all of those visible achievements at the end of our life don't actually make us that happy or don't make us actually feel that fulfilled. And I'm just going to share a few things with you, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity just to reflect on it, and then we'll just have some questions and answers. In our lives often, we put a lot of emphasis on position. The world judges us by what position we've achieved in society. What is your position in the ranking? What is your power in the hierarchy? What is your popularity in the world? Position and achieving position sometimes dominates our consciousness, and we tend to judge ourselves by that. We get depressed when we are not able to achieve the positions we want. And sometimes, even more dangerously, what we think is that once we achieve the position, we're successful. But actually, that's just the visible world. There's an invisible part of our life which needs to be developed. And if this isn't developed, then the positions you have in the world won't actually mean anything. Can anyone think what that may be? You can just have a guess. Self-respect, gratitude, dedication, faith. These are all good. Sometimes I do this just to see if someone's got a better idea than me. But these are all good ideas. What I was thinking about is relationships. And in Sanskrit, we call this Sangha. And this is actually social wealth. Your position in the world doesn't mean anything if you don't have deep, meaningful, honest, authentic relationships with other people. They say now the story of the world is crowded loneliness. We're surrounded by so many people, but we don't feel as though we connect to anyone. And so we can have position. But if we don't connect deeply, if we don't have an exchange of love with others, then in what sense have we actually become wealthy? And therefore, relationships, it's said in the world, in Sanskrit, it's said that there are 4 basic drivers behind a relationship. In Sanskrit, those words are bhaya, asha, kartavya, and prema. And in English, this means fear, desire, duty, and love. Our relationship with God, and not just our relationship with God, but our relationship with the people around us, are usually driven by one of these four things or a mix of them, but something predominates. And it's said that as we go up this hierarchy, the relationships actually get deeper. If we were talking about this in common terms, we could say some people, like for example, let's take leadership. So leadership, some people relate to you as a leader because of your position. They follow you because of your position, and that's it. That's leadership on the lowest platform. But then some people follow you because of your power. Because they know that if they please you, then they can get certain things done. And therefore people follow you because of your power. Sometimes people follow you because of your productivity as a leader. Because they see that you've produced so many things and you've helped them, and therefore they feel a certain indebtedness to you. But real leadership is when they are convinced by your personality. That's real leadership. That's real relationship. And that's real connection. And you can think about anything like this. If you're a parent, do kids relate to you because of fear, desire, duty, or love? If you're together with someone in a relationship, are you together because of fear, because you're fearful about being alone? Are you together because they give you something that kind of fills a vacuum in you? Are you together because you feel like we've gone through so many things and we really should be together and I feel an indebtedness? Or are you together because you actually feel connected with that person deeply? Social wealth, Sangha, means that in our life, it's not just that we have position, but we actually have genuine connection and relationships. This is what makes life vibrant and colorful. Let me give you another one. Oftentimes in our life, we spend a lot of time on qualifications, getting qualifications, learning, climbing up the academic ladder. According to Vedic scripture, qualification doesn't really mean much if you don't have genuine insight. And this is what we call wisdom wealth. And in Sanskrit, this is known as Vigyan. Many people now have a lot of information in their head, but how many of them have digested it, and how much of that knowledge has actually been processed into insight that can actually help you to look at the world in a much deeper way? People who have that wisdom, who have insight, who have actual knowledge which is digested, or what we call in Sanskrit, Vigyan. Gyan means knowledge, and Vigyan means intensified knowledge that's been digested. Those people end up living the most colorful and vibrant lives. Because a life lived with wisdom is a life lived with vision, purpose, and impact and direction. So just one thing I'll share with you on this, because we talked about 0 to 25, and then we talked about 75. According to a social study, between the ages of 0 and 25, age and wisdom is correlated. So generally, an 18-year-old is always more knowledgeable than an 11-year-old. Because between the ages of 0 and 25, we're learning through an education system. But did you know that between the ages of 25 and 75, between the ages of 25 and 75, there is no correlation between age and wisdom. In other words, a 70-year-old is not necessarily wiser than a 30-year-old. They actually find there's no correlation. And why is that? Because after 25, we're not learning through an educational system. So how are we learning? Experience. Is it just experience? Because I could say a 70-year-old has way more life experience than a 30-year-old.
How much exploring?
Exploring. It's said that after the age of 25 we learn through experience, through exploration, but most importantly, experience and exploration that's reflected upon. In other words, people who take the time to stop and think. Isn't it amazing? In life, we can just go, 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 and forget to actually stop and just think. Ask yourself, when was the last time that I just sat down for 15, 20 minutes and just thought about my life? Where am I going? What success? Am I achieving my goals? Am I living in line with my principles and values? How much time do we take to think? Unless there's that space in life, all of the information that we have will never really turn into insight and wisdom. And so, even according to Ayurveda, all of you know Ayurveda, it's said that half of your stomach should be filled with solids, 1/4 of your stomach should be filled with water, and the other quarter should be filled with sweets. No, I'm joking. The other quarter should be filled with air. Because if you don't have air, if you don't have space, if you don't have room to breathe, then how will you be able to digest everything that's going on? And the same thing stands for life. We're so busy that we forget to reflect, think, and ask ourselves questions. Am I doing the most impactful thing in my life? Therefore, the second aspect of living a colorful and vibrant life is to have wisdom wealth. And that means don't just focus on qualifications, but focus on having genuine knowledge. The other thing we often focus on is achievements, being successful, being prosperous, earning money, and all these kind of external achievements. But what the scriptures explain is that there's something you have to do with those achievements in order to make them satisfying in your life. And you want to know what that is? Contribution. This is called service wealth, or in Sanskrit we call this seva. All the money in the world will not make us happy unless we use that money in serving others and making the world a more beautiful place. Sometimes people think that when you become spiritual, you can't be ambitious. Sometimes people think that if you become spiritual, something like making money is just outlawed, because that's materialistic. But that's not actually what the Bhagavad Gita teaches. But what the Bhagavad Gita does teach is that if you think this and this alone is going to make you happy, then you're going to be let down. By all means, be ambitious. By all means, earn money. But something has to happen before and something has to happen after. The first thing the Gita tells us is earn your money with integrity. As the Christian saying says, what profiteth a man who gains the whole world but loses their soul? We earn money, but then we lose our health. We earn money, but then we lose our character. We earn money, but then we lose our peace of mind. We earn money, but then we lose all of our time. And then we have all of this, but we have no time, energy, headspace, and relationships to even employ it in a proper way. Therefore, by all means be ambitious, but approach the ambition with integrity and don't lose your values. And then once you become successful, spend with generosity. In other words, once you make all the money, give it to the guy in orange. No, I'm joking. No, use it, you can if you want to. Use it for the benefit of others. Use it in seva. Use it selflessly. And then you'll find that the true achievement of that ambition reaches its pinnacle in terms of making us happy. Rabindranath Tagore, he said, I went to sleep and I dreamt that life is joy. I woke up and I realized life is service. But then I began to serve and I realized service is joy. We earn a living by what we get, but we earn a life by what we give. And therefore, this is called service wealth. The fourth one is, in our life, we put a lot of emphasis on having as many opportunities as possible. It's interesting, even as parents, we want our children to have every opportunity available. And so we somehow think that in our life, if we've opened up every single opportunity, nothing should be off the radar, that we're somehow or other more successful. But what the scriptures teach us is having all the opportunities in the world means nothing if you don't have discernment. This is called willpower wealth, or in Sanskrit we call this viveka. Literally, the ability to make good decisions. No point having all the opportunities in life if we don't have the decision-making power and the discrimination and discernment to understand what's good for us. Question. 30 years on a cigarette packet, 30 years ago on a cigarette packet, it said, smoking may damage your health. 10 years later, the message changed, smoking causes cancer. 10 years later, the message changed, smoking kills. Question. If someone picks up a cigarette packet which says smoking kills, they read that and in the very next moment they pick up a cigarette and smoke it, are they exercising free will? Yes or no? What do you think? Yes or no? Ignorance will. The answer, according to the Bhagavad Gita, is yes and no. Yes, because according to the Bhagavad Gita, we always have free will. However, what can happen is we can become so affected by the energies of this world and put so much in illusion that our ability to exercise our free will becomes less and less and less and less. So I don't have time to go into it today, but in the Bhagavad Gita it's basically mentioned that there are three energies which are pervading this world: ignorance, passion, and goodness. In Sanskrit we call this tamas, rajas, and sattva. And as you change the energies in your life, and as you go to the higher modes of nature, then what happens is your ability to discern, make good decisions, and exercise your free will, and do the things that you know are going to be most impactful, that ability expands. Do you ever have the experience in your life where you're doing something and you're like, I don't know why I'm doing this, this is a terrible thing to do, but anyway, let's do it. It's amazing. While we're doing it, we know we're making a mistake, yet we still feel impelled to do it. Why is that? Because the energy of ignorance and passion has overcome us. So the Bhagavad Gita explains that there's a whole lifestyle that you can inculcate in your life. These are like the ultimate life hacks. And if you change the energy to sattva, then you can exercise your free will, then you have discernment, then if you have all the opportunities, you know which one to choose. Because the goal of life is not to have 10 million opportunities. The goal of life is to have the intelligence to understand, even if you have a few opportunities, which is the best one. And the final one I'll give you today is that oftentimes we put a lot of emphasis on popularity. We want to be known by everyone. Or even if we don't want to be known by everyone, we at least want to be appreciated and understood and valued by the people around us. Nothing wrong with that. However, there's something more subtle that we need to work on, and that is self-realization. There's no point if the whole world knows you, but you don't know yourself. There's no point if the whole world knows you, but you don't know who is divinity, what this world is, and why we're here in the first place. And therefore, this is called spiritual wealth, or what we call in Sanskrit, Atmaram, literally one who takes pleasure in the self. Generally, the more that we look for acceptance, attention, acknowledgement, I'm thinking of another A word. 3 is as far as I can go today. It means that we need so much validation from others. And the reason is because we're insecure. And we're insecure because we haven't become self-realized. We haven't understood who I am and how that spiritual identity of who I am means that I'm not lacking in anything. According to the Bhagavad Gita, there are 3 aspects to our identity. We have a body, we have a mind, but ultimately we're the soul. So most people have not understood their psychophysical nature. And even less people have understood their spiritual nature. If you become the most popular person in the world, but you haven't understood your own psychophysical nature and your own spiritual nature, none of that popularity will make you happy. And therefore, we shouldn't just look for everyone to know us, but we should try to know ourselves. So do you begin to see now? This is how we live a much more colorful life. Instead of looking for position, what should we look for? Relationships. This is called the wealth of Sangha. Instead of just trying to rack up qualifications, what should we actually try and do? Insight. This is called wisdom wealth, Vigyan, intensified knowledge. Instead of achievements, or along with achievements, what should we do? Contribution. We should use it for the betterment of others. This is called seva, or the service wealth. Instead of just trying to expand our opportunities, what should we try to do? Discernment, viveka, discrimination, the ability to make good decisions. And instead of just trying to ensure that the world knows us and that we're popular, what should we try to do? Self-realize. Understand first who we are. This is called Atmaram. And by developing these kind of wealth, we actually become wealthy. And this is what the world neglects. Because remember, I began today by showing you how what makes life life is the invisible things. And the invisible things are the things that we tend to neglect the most. And so today, on this day of Holi, where we're reflecting on colors, we can reflect on these things. And I'll just ask you for 1 minute to turn to the person next to you and share with them, which wealth do you think that you need to work on in your life? Which wealth of each one of these do you think that if you spent some time investing in would help you to be more vibrant, colorful, and achieving in your life? Yeah, can I ask you to do that? Okay, just get everyone back. So we are kind of coming towards the end of this. We're coming towards the end of this part of the program. But we do have 5 or 10 minutes, and please, by all means, please continue these conversations and just reflect upon these things. But we do have a little bit of time if anyone would like to share a reflection or respond to anything that I kind of presented, or perhaps you may have a question. We do have a little bit of time if anyone would like to raise any points for discussion. It would be nice to hear from you and see. And it doesn't have to be a question, perhaps just something triggered you or some thought you had. Yes?
On this point of self-realization, so often we hear that we're the consequences of our environment. So can sometimes self-realization just be like, if my family says I'm this way, that's what I am. I don't have to live with it, see what I am. My peers, my closest relationships will tell me what I am. Or is it like especially with reflect on?
Yeah, thank you so much. In the world, we're surrounded by many, what we call noises. Sorry. Discard, just give me a second. Yeah, we're surrounded by many noises. I'm just trying to get to a blank page so I can show you. So what happens in the world is that this is us. Oh God. Sorry. If it's going to work. Is it going to work? Okay, it's not going to work. We're surrounded by opinions. We're surrounded by expectations. We're surrounded by traditions. And what happens is that we then allow that noise to drown out the calling of our own heart. I sometimes tell people, if someone tells a lie loud enough and long enough, that lie becomes a so-called truth. That's scary. You know what's more scary? If enough people accept that so-called truth, it becomes a tradition. And you know what's more scary? If that tradition is then transmitted from one generation to the next, it becomes a culture. And you know what's even more scary? People are born into that culture, and then they decide all of their life parameters based on a culture that's based on a so-called tradition, that's based on a so-called truth, that's actually a lie. Therefore, it's not that we shouldn't listen to other people. It's not that expectations, opinions, all traditions, all cultures are useless and not needed. They're good, but they can't be the all in all. Because if you allow that to drown out the calling of your own heart, then you might find that the worst type of success is when you achieve all of your goals and then you realize they were somebody else's goals. Therefore, we tell people every year, disconnect for 1 month. Every month, disconnect for 1 day. And every day, disconnect for 1 hour. Because you need that time away from the opinions, expectations, and traditions of the world to actually understand, who am I? Why am I here? And what's the purpose of my life? Otherwise, we might find we live our whole life and then we look back and we have regrets. And there's nothing worse than that. So I would say it's good to listen to other people, but not at the expense of listening to your heart. And therefore, try to find some space in your life, all of us, where we can actually ask ourselves the question, who am I and what's the purpose of my life? Is that okay? Thank you. Yes?
How do you know that when you ask yourself those questions, the answers that you're coming up with are actually coming from yourself and aren't similar sort of follow-up to that question, but if you ask yourself, what is it I want to do with my life? How do I know that the answer I come up with hasn't been conditioned to me, or, been something that I've just always believed as a child, and that's why I'm answering it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's such a good question. I think you can't be sure. But one thing's for sure, if you don't actually begin that process of challenging, then it's definitely not going to be you. Then it's definitely just going to be what you've been told externally. And when you start doing some soul searching, it's actually very interesting that when you start doing that soul searching and reflecting, your initial answers probably will be the ones that you've been conditioned by the environment around you. But as you keep digging more and more and more and more, then you'll actually begin realizing, this is not what I want. This is what the world has told me to be. Again, I'm not going to an extreme here and saying the things that our parents wanted us to be or the things that society wants us to be is all useless. No. There's a lot of love, there's a lot of concern, and there's a lot of goodwill there. But still, you have to live your life. And therefore, I think we just have to begin exercising our capacity of free will. And you'll know that you're moving towards your more authentic self by the simple fact that you'll just be happier. Simple as that. I think there's a sense in which when you're functioning in the world, you have to be practical. Like spiritual culture will tell us that we should be humble. In fact, spiritual culture tells us we should be more humble than a blade of grass. But if I come for an interview at Accenture and they say, what's the qualification for you to do this job? And I say, I'm lower than the grass. It's not going to fly, right? So it means I have to present myself. I have to act in the world. I have to be practical. But in my heart, I should always try to do it from a humble space. A teacher will sometimes say very strong words to the students, but it's coming from a humble heart. The Mahabharata actually says that a politician's words are like butter, but their heart is like a razor. And a saintly person's heart is like butter, but sometimes their words are like a razor. In other words, these qualities are something that are embedded deep within our being, but then how we display them in the world is appropriate to the situation that we're living in. And therefore, the deepest spiritualists are able to maintain humility, tolerance. Here we have the Bhagavad Gita and Arjuna, and he's fighting on a battlefield. If you think Accenture is bad, imagine being on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. It's a fratricidal battle. And he's holding his spiritual integrity and at the same time being a warrior, because it's about embedding those qualities in our psyche and then expressing them appropriately. So that's the first point I would make. And the second point I would make is an ancient Sanskrit aphorism from the Manu Samhita that says, Dharma rakshita rakshita. If you protect your dharma will protect you. In other words, to get some short-term gain, you can compromise your values. But what will eventually happen is it will break down and it will make you dissatisfied. However, if in the intensity of living in this world, you don't compromise on your values, you protect your dharma, then it's actually said, according to the ancient system, from dharma comes artha, and from artha comes kama, and from kama we then pursue moksha. So the very interesting aspect, artha means economic development, and kama means the fulfillment of desire. So it's interesting, people think if I'm going to be spiritual, if I want to be an entrepreneur, then I've got to somehow just compromise my values. But the idea is that if you do it with dharma, you will necessarily be successful. Because if you protect your Dharma would protect you. I was just in Boston, so I was doing a session with some entrepreneurs who had just graduated from the Harvard Business School. And we have one of our entrepreneurs there, and he has a policy that whenever an entrepreneur begins their business, 50% of the profits from day one go for a benevolent cause. And every single entrepreneur who he shows me and introduces me who's had the boldness to do that ends up earning an exponential amount that ends up out-earning the people who don't do that. Because if you protect your Dharma, Artha will come, because that's the law of the universe. So in this way, I understand it's difficult, and you come into the office, people are devious, people are not straightforward, and you feel like if I just come here as the saintly person, then I'm just going to get walked over. But there's a way to be practical, but not compromise your values. Some thoughts. I think we are out of time. So thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience, and I hope... Thank you so much, and hope to be with all of you again.